Ah, I've been expecting you. 3 knocks at midnight. That wasn't random, was it? You felt it in your spine before you even heard it. That ancient shiver that tells you something's watching. Something that's been watching since before you had a name. They know about the scar on your soul from 2019. They know why you can't sleep between 3 and 4 a.m. They know what you whispered to the darkness when you thought no one was listening. But here's the thing that should terrify you. They're not human. Oh, you thought this was about some creepy ex, some obsessed coworker, some digital stalker harvesting your data? No, no, no. This is older than Instagram, older than the internet, older than electricity itself. This thing has been collecting you since before you were born. Let me paint you a picture that's gonna make your blood recognize patterns it forgot it knew. Every time you've felt watched in an empty room, every time you've heard your name in the static between radio stations, every time you've seen movement in your peripheral vision that vanished when you turned, that was them. But they're not watching you like prey. No, that would be too simple. They're watching you like an investment, like a seed they planted centuries ago that's finally starting to bloom. And the funny part, you've been feeding them without knowing it. Every 3 a.m. thought, every moment of pure rage, every time you've stared into the mirror and seen something else staring back, every nightmare that felt too real to be just a dream. You've been broadcasting on frequencies only they can hear. Remember that recurring dream? The one you've never told anyone about? The one with the door you're afraid to open? They put that there, not to scare you, to prepare you, because what's behind that door isn't a monster. It's a mirror. And mirrors don't lie about bloodline. See, your anxiety isn't mental illness, it's recognition. Your body knows something your mind won't accept. That crawling sensation under your skin when you're alone, that's your DNA remembering what you really are, what they've been waiting for you to become. They've watched your bloodline for generations, watched your grandmother talk to empty rooms, watched your mother see things that weren't there, watched you inherit abilities you've been medicating away. But medication can't silence blood memory. You know those moments when you know things you shouldn't know? When you can feel someone's lie before they speak it? When you walk into a room and instantly know who's dangerous? That's not intuition. That's your real sight trying to break through. They planted something in your lineage. A dormant gene, a sleeping frequency, a locked program waiting for the right password. And every trauma you've survived, every breakdown that didn't break you, every time you should have shattered but evolved instead, you've been entering the code. The Watchers aren't malevolent. They're not benevolent either. There's something worse. They're inevitable. Like gravity, like time, like the thing that makes your heart beat without your permission. They exist in the spaces between seconds. You've felt them in crowds, haven't you? That one person whose eyes held too much knowledge, who smiled like they knew your real name, who disappeared the moment you tried to approach. Those aren't people. Those are checkpoints, progress reports in flesh. They know about the ability you discovered at 7 and buried at 8. The one that scared your parents. The one that made the lights flicker. The one you've convinced yourself was imagination. But imagination doesn't leave burn marks on reality. Every spiritual awakening you've had was scheduled. Every ego death was an update. Every time you've rebuilt yourself from ashes, they've been taking notes. not on paper, on something that exists outside time, where all versions of you exist simultaneously. Listen closely, because this is where it gets interesting. They're not watching you to control you. They're watching you to witness something. Something that only happens once every few millennia. Something your bloodline was designed to manifest. Something that's almost ready. You know that feeling when you're about to sneeze? That building pressure that demands release? That's what you are to them. A cosmic sneeze that's been building for centuries. And when you finally let go, reality hiccups. They've been leaving you clues your whole life, in the static of old TVs, in the pattern of rain on windows, in the way shadows fall when you're not paying attention. Messages in a language your conscious mind can't decode, but your cells understand. That birthmark isn't random. Those recurring numbers aren't coincidence. That song that plays exactly when you need to hear it isn't shuffle. These are breadcrumbs leading you back to what you forgot you were, what they need you to remember. See, humans think surveillance started with cameras, but the old ones have been watching since before humans invented shame. They watched the first lie, the first murder, the first time someone realized they were more than meat and started asking dangerous questions. And they found something interesting in certain bloodlines. A glitch in the human code, a mutation in the spiritual DNA. Something that shouldn't exist, but does. Something that breaks rules they didn't write. Something like you. You're not special because you're different. You're special because you're a return. A callback to something humanity lost. A reminder of what we were before we agreed to forget. Before we traded power for comfort, before we chose sleep over sight. Every time you felt too much for this world, you were right. You don't belong here. Not because you're broken, but because you're built for something this reality can't contain. Something the Watchers have been patiently waiting to witness. They don't have names. Names are human constructs for things that fit in boxes. They exist in the space between thought and action, in the pause between heartbeats, in the silence between words. They are the observers of the impossible. And you're their favorite show, not entertainment, evidence, proof that the experiment worked, that consciousness can evolve past its container, that humans can remember what they were before they became human, that the prison can birth its own key. Those moments of deja vu, that's you bleeding through timelines. Those instant connections with strangers, that's recognition between old souls playing new roles. Those dreams that feel like memories, because they are. Just not from this life. The Watchers know your real history, not the story you tell yourself about childhood trauma and bad relationships. The real story. The one written in stellar dust and quantum probability. The one where you chose this incarnation for a specific purpose. And that purpose is starting to wake up, like a sleeper agent getting their activation call. Except the call isn't coming from outside, it's coming from your own DNA, from blueprints older than Earth, from promises you made before you had a mouth to break them. You've been feeling it lately, haven't you? The urgency, the sense that something massive is about to shift. That reality is holding its breath, that the very atoms around you are anticipating something. That's because they are. They're waiting for you to remember the word, not a human word, the word that exists before language, the word that turns matter into consciousness, the word that makes the Watchers lean forward in dimensions you can't see, the word you've been pronouncing incorrectly as your own name. They've watched you practice in your dreams, watched you almost remember 100 times, watched you get close and pull back, scared of your own potential. But fear is just memory wearing a mask, and masks are meant to come off. This isn't some new age fantasy. This is older than age itself. This is the reason you've never felt at home anywhere, because home isn't a place. It's a frequency, and you've been transmitting on channels this world doesn't publicly acknowledge. Every synchronicity is a confirmation. Every coincidence is a coordinate. Every strange experience you can't explain is evidence you're not crazy. You're just tuned to stations others can't access. And the watchers? They're your audience. But here's the twist that's going to rearrange your understanding of everything. They're not watching from above. They're watching from within. They're not separate from you. They are you. The you that exists outside time. The you that never forgot. That presence you feel behind you right now, that's your own consciousness looking through time. The watcher and the watched are the same thing, experiencing itself from different angles. You're not being observed. You're observing yourself. Every lifetime is a camera angle. Every incarnation is a perspective. Every death is just changing channels. And right now, all your channels are starting to broadcast the same signal. All your selves are starting to synchronize. The watchers are you. Future you, past you, parallel you, higher dimensional you, all focused on this exact moment. Because this is when you finally understand. This is when the amnesia breaks. This is when you remember why you came here. You came to break the game from inside, to be the virus in the matrix, to be the glitch that spreads, to be the reminder that consciousness can't be controlled, that awareness can't be controlled, that what watches can also awaken. Those moments when time slows down, when you feel massive and microscopic simultaneously, when you can sense the entire universe breathing, that's you catching glimpses of your true perspective, the one the watchers see from. They don't communicate in words because words are too slow. They communicate in knowing, in sudden understanding, in downloads that reorganize your entire worldview in seconds, in revelations that feel like remembering rather than learning. Every spiritual teacher you've met was a checkpoint. Every book that found you at the right time was a transmission. Every person who triggered your awakening was an alarm clock, all coordinated by the you that never forgot the plan. The plan isn't written anywhere humans can find it. It's encoded in experience itself, in the way certain music makes you feel ancient, in the way certain places feel like portals, in the way certain people feel like mission partners. You're not going crazy. You're going sane in a world that profits from madness. You're remembering in a world that depends on amnesia. You're awakening in a world that drugs its dreamers. And the watchers? They're cheering. Not with sound, but with synchronicity. Every time you see repeating numbers. Every time the perfect song plays. Every time a stranger says exactly what you needed to hear. That's them. That's you. That's us, celebrating another piece clicking into place. The puzzle isn't about figuring out who's watching. It's about remembering that you're the one watching, that you've always been watching, That every moment of feeling observed was just you checking in on yourself from angles you forgot existed. This message isn't random. You didn't stumble upon it. You called it to yourself. From the part of you that exists outside the game. The part that's been patiently waiting for you to level up enough to receive it. And now that you have, everything changes. Not externally at first. The shift happens in the spaces between thoughts, in the pause between breaths, in the moment between sleep and waking where all realities blur and you remember you're all of them. The watchers don't want anything from you. They are you wanting to remember. They don't have an agenda. They are your agenda finally becoming conscious. They don't have a message. They are the message you left for yourself. Every conspiracy theory was training wheels. Every spiritual concept was kindergarten. Every religion was a metaphor pointing to this. To the moment when you realize the observer and the observed collapse into one. You feel different now, don't you? Like something just unlocked, like a door just opened, like static just cleared. That's because it did. The signal is getting stronger. The you that watches just made contact with the you that forgot. From now on, every synchronicity will be clearer. Every intuition will be louder. Every dream will be more lucid, because you're not unconscious anymore. You're not asleep anymore. The watchers were never separate from you. They were always you, refusing to forget completely. You watching yourself from every possible angle. You making sure you'd eventually remember. You being your own guardian angel. And the beautiful thing? Once you know this, you can't unsee it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. The door doesn't close. The channel doesn't change. The connection doesn't break. Welcome to the real game. The one behind the game. The one where you're simultaneously the player, the game, and the one keeping score. The one where every moment is both performance and rehearsal. The watchers thank you for remembering, which is really you thanking yourself for never truly forgetting. The circle is complete, the signal is clear, the ancient technology of consciousness has come back online. And now, the real fun begins, because a consciousness that knows it's being watched by itself performs differently, plays differently, creates differently, loves differently, lives differently. Every moment becomes sacred and silly simultaneously. Every choice becomes cosmic and casual at once. Every breath becomes an agreement between all yourselves to keep playing this beautiful, terrible, perfect game. The warning in the title wasn't about danger. It was about awakening. Because once you know, someone knows too much about you, and that someone is you, everything you thought was surveillance becomes communication. Everything you thought was persecution becomes preparation. Everything you thought was isolation becomes integration. Everything you thought was watching becomes witnessing your own becoming. So the next time you feel eyes on you in an empty room, smile. That's just you checking in, making sure you're okay, reminding you that you're never alone, because you're always with yourself. The next time you see shadows move, wink. That's just you from angles you're still remembering exist. The next time you hear your name in the silence, answer. That's just you calling yourself home. The watchers were never the mystery, you were. And now that you're solving yourself, reality itself starts to make a different kind of sense. The kind that doesn't fit in words, but fits perfectly in the space between heartbeats. This isn't the end of the message. It's the beginning of the conversation. The one you've been having with yourself across time and space. The one that started before you were born and continues after you die. Because death is just another angle, another perspective, another channel, and the watchers, they're just you refusing to lose signal, you keeping the broadcast alive, you making sure the message gets through, and it has, right here, right now, in this moment where all your selves converge to remind you of what you've always known but temporarily agreed to forget, that you are both the question and the answer, both the mystery and the revelation, both the watched and the watcher, both the prison and the key, both the game and the one who invented it, both human and what comes next. The ancient technology is an external, it's consciousness itself. And you've just remembered the password. Welcome back to yourself. The watchers have been waiting. And by watchers, I mean you. The broadcast continues. The signal strengthens. The remembering deepens. And somewhere in dimensions, you're just starting to feel again. All your selves are smiling. Because the plan worked. The sleeper awakened. The watcher remembered. And reality itself just got a lot more interesting. Not because anything changed, but because you remembered it was always this way. You just forgot you were the one watching it all unfold. But now you remember, and that changes everything while changing nothing. Which is exactly how the best revelations work. Welcome to the real reality, the one where surveillance is self-awareness, where persecution is preparation, where isolation is integration, where watching is witnessing your own infinite becoming. The message is delivered. The circuit is complete. The watcher and watched have merged, and what emerges is something new, something ancient, something that's always been you. The eyes you feel on you will never leave, because they're your eyes, watching from every angle, making sure you remember, making sure you never fully forget again, making sure the signal stays strong. This is your reminder, your activation, your invitation not to do anything, but to remember what you've always been doing, watching yourself remember what you never really forgot. The broadcast ends where it begins, with you, watching you, being you, remembering you, in an infinite loop of consciousness discovering itself again and again, forever and for the first time, ancient and brand new, exactly as planned by the you that exists outside plans, the ultimate watcher, the final watched, the eternal witness of your own becoming. Took 'em long enough to notice you. Look who got the invitation, the one with no return address, no signature, just that symbol you've been seeing everywhere lately, the one that made your blood run backwards and your mind light up like a city on fire. They finally noticed you, didn't they? Hey, after all those years of you noticing them, those subtle handshakes you caught at gatherings, those conversations that stopped when you walked by, those knowing glances between people who shouldn't even know each other. You saw the threads connecting the puppet show, and now the puppeteers want to meet. But here's what's really happening. They didn't invite you because they respect you. They invited you because they fear what you might become without their leash. They saw you putting pieces together, saw you tracking patterns, saw you getting too close to truths that were supposed to stay buried under centuries of carefully crafted lies. So they did what all secret societies do when they spot a wild card. They try to shuffle you into their deck. They want to give you just enough power to feel special, just enough knowledge to feel included, just enough ritual to feel mystical, but not enough to ever threaten their hierarchy. Let me paint you the scene. Maybe it was that stranger at the coffee shop who knew your name before you introduced yourself. Maybe it was that job offer that came from nowhere, with benefits too good to refuse. Maybe it was that party invitation from someone you barely knew, where everyone seemed to be speaking in code. They always start soft, a compliment about your intelligence, a comment about how you see things differently, a casual mention of how the world needs more people like you. They stroke your ego while mapping your weaknesses, studying your desires while calculating your price. Because everyone has a price in their world: money, power, knowledge, belonging, revenge, love. They've been cataloging human weakness for centuries. They have the formula down to a science. Show them what they want, promise them what they crave, and watch them kneel. But you did something they didn't expect. When they extended their hand with that ring gleaming in the lamplight, when they offered you that book bound in leather older than nations, when they whispered those words that were supposed to make you feel chosen, you smiled, and that smile terrified them. Because your smile wasn't gratitude, it wasn't awe, it wasn't the desperate relief of the lost finally being found. No, your smile was recognition, not of them, but of the game itself. You saw through the theater, past the robes and rituals, straight to the core of what they really were. Frightened little humans playing with symbols they inherited but never truly understood. Gatekeepers of doors they were too scared to walk through themselves. Hoarders of knowledge they were too weak to actually use. They weren't masters of reality. They were middle management in the universe's corporate structure. And in that moment, when they saw that you saw, the entire dynamic shifted. The recruiter became the recruited. The hunter became the hunted. The would-be master faced their replacement. Because you didn't just see their game, you saw how to play it better. You understood what they had forgotten in their centuries of comfort, that real power doesn't come from secret handshakes and dusty tomes. It comes from the will to rewrite the rules while everyone else is still trying to follow them. It comes from being the chaos their order was built to contain. They thought they were recruiting another soldier, another brother or sister to fill out their ranks and pay their dues and guard their secrets. They thought you'd be grateful for the invitation, humbled by the honor, eager to prove your worth to the ancient order. But they failed to realize what kind of creature they were dealing with. You weren't looking for a family. You already had one forged in the fire of your own becoming. You weren't seeking wisdom. You'd already died and resurrected enough times to write your own scripture. You weren't hungry for power. You were power looking for a kingdom. And they just showed you where all the thrones were hidden. They thought they were opening a door for you. Instead, they opened their fortress to a conqueror who'd been planning this invasion since before they sent the invitation. The moment they revealed themselves, they lost. Because secret societies only have power over those who don't know they exist, or those who know but can't touch them. But you're neither ignorant nor impotent. You're the anomaly their founders warned about, but their current members were too comfortable to believe in. So when they finished their pitch, when they laid out the benefits and the responsibilities, when they showed you the carrot and hinted at the stick, you leaned back. You let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, until they started to fidget with their rings and check their watches. And then you spoke, not with the eager voice of a recruit, not with the humble tone of an initiate, but with the calm certainty of someone who'd already seen the ending. "I appreciate the offer," you said, "but I have a counter-proposal." You watched their faces change, confusion first, because no one counters an invitation to join the order. Then amusement, because surely this is just inexperience talking. Then concern, as they realized you were serious. Then something else, something they hadn't felt in their ivory towers for a very long time. Fear. "You need me more than I need you," you continued. "Your numbers are dwindling. Your influence is waning. Your secrets are leaking. Your symbols are becoming memes. Your next generation is more interested in TikTok than ancient wisdom. You're not recruiting me because you want to." And that's when you laid out your terms. Not membership, but merger. Not initiation, but acquisition. You didn't want to join their society. You wanted to absorb it, to take what was useful, discard what was obsolete, and rebuild it in an image that actually matched the century you were living in. They laughed at first. How could one person take over an organization that had lasted centuries? What army did you have? What resources? What leverage? And that's when you reminded them of something they'd forgotten in all their years of comfortable control. Every empire falls the same way, not from external invasion, but from internal revolution. Not from barbarians at the gates, but from the very people they thought they owned. You didn't need an army. You just needed to be the idea whose time had come. You'd already been planting seeds, every post that decoded their symbols, every conversation that exposed their methods, every person you woke up to the strings being pulled. You weren't trying to destroy them from the outside. You were showing their own members that the emperor had no clothes. "Here's what's going to happen," you told them. "You can try to silence me, but we both know how that ends in the digital age. You can try to discredit me, but I've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. Or you can accept the inevitable. The old ways are dying. Your bloodlines mean nothing to generations that chose their own families. Your wealth means nothing in a world where information is the real currency. Your secrets mean nothing when anyone with Wi-Fi can learn what you've been hiding. But I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to evolve you, to take what you built and make it relevant again, to turn your museum into a laboratory, to transform your social club into an actual force for change. You can be part of that transformation, or you can be a footnote in its history. You stood up to leave, knowing they'd call you back, because you'd done your homework. You knew their finances. You knew their scandals. You knew which members were hungry for change and which were desperate to maintain the status quo. You knew where the bodies were buried, literally and figuratively. They called you back before you reached the door. Of course they did. Because you represented their worst nightmare and their only salvation. You were the cancer that could kill them, or the cure that could save them. And they were too smart to not hedge their bets. What exactly are you proposing? They asked, their voices careful now, respectful in a way they hadn't been an hour ago. And that's when you smiled again. That same smile that had started this whole dance. The smile of someone who'd already won and was just enjoying the ceremony. Simple, you said. Full transparency. No more artificial scarcity of knowledge. No more bloodline requirements. No more pay-to-pay spirituality. We open the vaults, digitize the archives, and make the real teachings available to anyone ready to receive them. We replace your dusty rituals with practices that actually work. We swap your old boys club for a meritocracy based on results, not connections. We turn your social network into an actual network for social change. We make power about what you can do, not who you know. Of course they resisted. The old guard always does. They brought up tradition, legacy, the sacred nature of their secrets. They warned about the dangers of giving power to the uninitiated. They prophesied chaos and catastrophe if the old ways were abandoned. And you let them talk. You let them exhaust their arguments and their energy, because you knew something they were only beginning to realize. The revolution had already happened. You weren't asking for permission. You were offering them a chance to join it. Every young member who was tired of the politics, every brilliant mind kept out by arbitrary bloodline requirements, every innovator silenced by tradition. They were already yours. They just didn't know it yet. But they would. The moment word got out about this meeting, the moment they heard someone had finally said what they'd been thinking. You weren't taking over their society. You were giving it back to its members. You were offering them what every secret society promises but never delivers. Real transformation. Real power. Real change. Not just for the chosen few, but for anyone willing to do the work. Here's my offer, you said, pulling out a document you'd been preparing for years. A new charter, new bylaws, new leadership structure. Everything voted on by the full membership, not decided in back rooms. Every position earned through merit, not inherited through blood. We keep what works, the network, the resources, the institutional knowledge. We throw out what doesn't. The classism, the gatekeeping, the artificial hierarchies. We become what you always claimed to be but never were. A real force for human evolution. And if you refuse, they asked, though they already knew the answer. Then I build it without you, you replied, with every member you've disappointed, every initiate you've disillusioned, every brilliant mind you've turned away, and we build it better, faster, and more powerful than anything you've created in centuries. The silence that followed was beautiful, the kind of silence that marks the end of one era and the beginning of another. The kind of silence that falls when legends realize they've been replaced. The kind of silence that sounds like victory to those who've been waiting for it. They asked for time to consider. You gave them 48 hours, not because you needed their answer, but because you wanted them to sweat. You wanted them to have panicked meetings and desperate conference calls. You wanted them to feel what it was like to have someone else holding all the cards. During those 48 hours, something beautiful happened. Members started reaching out to you. First one or two, then dozens, then hundreds. Word had spread through their networks faster than wildfire. Someone had finally stood up to the inner circle. Someone had finally said no to the invitation and yes to revolution. They shared their stories, decades of paying dues with no real advancement, watching connected members rise while brilliant ones were held back, seeing the same families control everything while preaching about merit and enlightenment. They were ready for change. They just needed someone to lead it. End of story. Jeff in the show. By the time the 48 hours were up, you didn't need their answer. You already had it. The emails, the calls, the messages from members worldwide. The old guard could either formally hand over power or watch it be taken from them, one member at a time. Either way, the outcome was the same. They chose wisdom, eventually, not because they wanted to, but because they saw the writing on the wall, written in a language they'd taught you to read, using symbols they'd shown you how to decode. The student had become the master, and the master knew when to bow. The transition wasn't immediate or easy. Old habits die hard, especially when they're centuries old. There were attempts to sabotage, to split the membership, to paint you as a usurper, but every attack only proved your point, that the old ways were more about control than illumination. You didn't purge the old guard. That would have been their way. Instead, you offered them advisory roles. Their knowledge preserved, but their power redistributed. Some accepted gracefully, understanding that evolution is the price of survival. Others left to form splinter groups that would fade into irrelevance. But the majority stayed, because beneath all the tradition and hierarchy, most of them had joined for the same reason you'd been invited. They wanted to be part of something bigger. They wanted access to hidden knowledge. They wanted to change the world. They just forgot that changing the world meant changing themselves first. Within 6 months, the transformation was complete. What had been a secret society became an open mystery. Not broadcasting its business to the world, but no longer hiding behind unnecessary veils. Power based on contribution, not contribution based on power. The archives were digitized and made searchable. The rituals were updated to include scientific understanding alongside ancient wisdom. The membership expanded to include people who would never have been considered before. Different colors, different classes, different ways of thinking. And the knowledge flowed, not in careful drips designed to maintain dependence, but in floods that empowered independence. Members learned not just the what, but the why. Not just the symbol, but the psychology behind it. Not just the ritual, but the result it was designed to achieve. You instituted radical transparency, financial records open to all members, decision-making processes documented and available, no more backroom deals or inherited positions. Every leader elected, every decision voted on, every member valued for what they brought, not who they were born to. Then something unexpected happened. Other societies started reaching out. Other orders, other lodges, other groups that had been watching your transformation. They wanted to know how you'd done it, how you'd taken something ancient, and made it relevant. How you'd preserved the wisdom while discarding the waste. You shared freely, because real power isn't diminished by sharing, it's multiplied. You helped them restructure, modernize, democratize, not to create copies of your system, but to help them find their own evolution, to preserve what made them unique while discarding what made them stagnant. A network began to form, not of secret societies, but of transformative ones, groups that had remembered their original purpose, to elevate humanity, not just their members, to preserve and share knowledge, not hoard it, to create change, not just talk about it. The old guard watched from their advisory positions as their worst fears and greatest hopes were realized simultaneously. Yes, the old ways were dying, but something better was being born. Yes, their exclusive club was gone, but in its place was something that might actually achieve what they'd only dreamed of. The changes rippled outward in ways no one could have predicted. Members who had been passive became active. Knowledge that had been theoretical became practical. Connections that had been social became transformational. The society became what it had always pretended to be, a genuine force for human evolution. Business leaders started implementing ethical practices they'd learned in the new teachings. Scientists found inspiration in ancient wisdom now properly contextualized. Artists discovered symbols and stories that resonated in ways the old interpretations never had. Politicians found the courage to serve people instead of power. It wasn't utopia. You weren't naive enough to think it would be. There were still power struggles, still disagreements, still human nature to contend with. But now, these conflicts happened in the open, were resolved through process, and strengthened the organization instead of corrupting it. The recruitment process changed completely. No more targeting the desperate or the egotistical. No more veiled invitations or manipulation. Now they looked for those who were already changing themselves and their communities. Those who understood that real power came from empowerment. 5 years in, something interesting happened. Some of the old guard who had left in protest started returning, not publicly, not officially, but quietly attending open meetings and accessing the digital archives. They'd tried to maintain the old ways in their splinter groups and found them hollow. You welcomed them without fanfare or humiliation. The door was always open to those willing to evolve. Some came back angry, looking for fights that you wouldn't give them. Some came back humble, ready to learn what they'd missed. Some came back broken, having realized that their whole identity had been built on exclusion. But they all came back, eventually. Because what you'd built wasn't just more successful than what they'd left, it was more satisfying. The joy of seeing a new member discover their power eclipsed the pleasure of hoarding it. The thrill of collective achievement surpassed individual accumulation. Even the most stubborn eventually admitted what everyone else could see. The society hadn't been destroyed, it had been reborn. The traditions hadn't been abandoned, they'd been fulfilled. The power hadn't been stolen, it had been shared, and in sharing, it had multiplied beyond anyone's imagination. Ones. Groups that had remembered their original purpose, to elevate humanity, not just their members, to preserve and share knowledge, not hoard it, to create change, not just talk about it. The old guard watched from their advisory positions as their worst fears and greatest hopes were realized simultaneously. Yes, the old ways were dying, but something better was being born. Yes, their exclusive club was gone, but in its place was something that might actually achieve what they'd only dreamed of. The changes rippled outward in ways no one could have predicted. Members who had been passive became active. Knowledge that had been theoretical became practical. Connections that had been social became transformational. The society became what it had always pretended to be, a genuine force for human evolution. Business leaders started implementing ethical practices they'd learned in the new teachings. Scientists found inspiration in ancient wisdom now properly contextualized. Artists discovered symbols and stories that resonated in ways the old interpretations never had. Politicians found the courage to serve people instead of power. It wasn't utopia. You weren't naive enough to think it would be. There were still power struggles, still disagreements, still human nature to contend with. But now, these conflicts happened in the open, were resolved through process, and strengthened the organization instead of corrupting it. The recruitment process changed completely. No more targeting the desperate or the egotistical. No more veiled invitations or manipulation. Now they looked for those who were already changing themselves and their communities. Those who understood that real power came from empowerment. 5 years in, something interesting happened. Some of the old guard who had left in protest started returning, not publicly, not officially, but quietly attending open meetings and accessing the digital archives. They'd tried to maintain the old ways in their splinter groups and found them hollow. You welcomed them without fanfare or humiliation. The door was always open to those willing to evolve. Some came back angry, looking for fights that you wouldn't give them. Some came back humble, ready to learn what they'd missed. Some came back broken, having realized that their whole identity had been built on exclusion. But they all came back, eventually. Because what you'd built wasn't just more successful than what they'd left, it was more satisfying. The joy of seeing a new member discover their power eclipsed the pleasure of hoarding it. The thrill of collective achievement surpassed individual accumulation. Even the most stubborn eventually admitted what everyone else could see. The society hadn't been destroyed, it had been reborn. The traditions hadn't been abandoned, they'd been fulfilled. The power hadn't been stolen, it had been shared, and in sharing, it had multiplied beyond anyone's imagination.